Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here, and I'm here tonight with a look at The Shared Dream. It is a board game from Odin Publishing, and it is a board game based upon their traditional role-playing game called Of Dreams and Magic. So I recently picked this game up, and along with the base game, which you're going to see here, I also picked up all of the expansions I could because upon first glance, I thought I was really going to love it. You can probably tell by the way I phrase that I'm not quite sure that I do yet. And I can't exactly pinpoint why. I know a couple reasons, and we'll talk about those things as I go through the game. So at its core, The Shared Dream is a horror-themed game, a horror-themed action-adventure game that also has elements of threat management. You might think of it somewhere along the lines of, you had to reduce it to a comparison. You could say it was Pandemic meets Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. Something like that, perhaps. The game that it most reminds me of, and the reason I don't use this game as a comparison, though, is because I don't think this game is nearly as popular and well known as Pandemic and Arkham Horror, but this game here, Of Dreams and Shadows, which is interesting because the game that The Shared Dream is based on is called Of Dreams and Magic. So lots of dreams going on tonight. These two games are similar in that they are both highly thematic threat management style games, but neither of them really does anything better than any other game of its type. And I think there are a few places in which this game actually falls down, but I am going to give it some more chances. And that is mainly due to, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, but mainly due to this expansion here called the Crux Collection. This expansion here is purely for a pure solo experience where you can play one character and go through a little adventure with each of the 10 characters that the base game comes with. That is a really neat idea, and that's one of the main reasons why right now I'm deciding to keep this game. A while ago, a friend of mine asked me if I knew of any horror games that weren't based on the mythos or weren't based on Cthulhu or that style of cosmic horror. And there aren't a lot. It seems like a lot of horror games are based on the Cthulhu mythos and the expanded Lovecraftian circle. And I have a feeling that it's because, one, it's an IP that's in public domain, so you can use it without having to pay licensing fees. And then you don't have to create all new stuff to go around it. So it's easy and it's accessible. So when The Shared Dream came out on Kickstarter, I think a couple years ago, I was interested in it because of its horror theme and it's not Cthulhu or mythos based. I waited a while and I finally got it a couple weeks ago at the local game shop here. I got the retail version of the first edition, I believe. And from what I hear, maybe the second edition alleviates some of my concerns with this game. So let's talk about those concerns at first. It's just, it's not a very good looking game. And for a thematic game, the game either has to look incredibly good or have a a bold or stark style. You know, something like the game I just talked about last week, Fallen Land. That game doesn't look very good, but it has a lot of character. It has a certain style. It has an evocative style, even though the look is amateurish. This game is all over the map in terms of iconography, in terms of UI, and a lot of the cards just are not very attractive at all. And it kind of makes it a little difficult to really get into the theme, in my opinion. So in this game, you are playing up to 4 players, can play up to 10 different characters. And each of the characters actually has 2 character sheets. So in the waking world, you might play as Francis Calvanetti, and then he can summon his dream self or his animus, where he becomes the scion, kind of this superpowered priest. And every single character has that double split personality. And as you can see here, the character sheets they look okay, but it doesn't really gel with the rest of the look of the game in a way. And then on top of that, everything just has this plain white background or backside. I know you never see the backside, but they could have used this for some better art or a story or something. And then we get into each of the characters has stats. They have combat, magic, social, and move. And then we also have these 3 tracks here: conviction, nightmare, and doubt. So like I said, this game is a threat management style of game in which you're trying to keep your eye on a certain number of threat while accomplishing goals. And in this particular case, on the character sheets, you have kind of 2 threat tracks that you're keeping track of. Conviction and nightmare, they each grow. And as conviction grows, you can spend your conviction to invoke your animus form, or you can spend your conviction to gain artifacts. These are like dream artifacts that you can pull into the real world. And these are kind of like your items and special abilities that make you stronger. When you spend conviction to bring forth your animus self, those points become nightmare points. And as nightmare fills up, it becomes easier for other creatures, for bad guys, to spawn on the board. So that is actually one thing that I think this game does really well, is that balance between these 2 tracks. You do have to pay very close attention to how you spend your conviction, especially when becoming your animus self, because when you do, as the nightmare grows, you will have a better chance of spawning more and stronger enemies. Another threat that you're trying to manage, and game designers, please listen, take me serious here. When you're coming up with names, proper nouns for the things that you're calling your game, do a search on Urban Dictionary for any other meanings, any other slang, any kind of derogatory terms that your things might also be known as, because the other threat that you're trying to manage is taint. Yeah, trying to explain this game to a group of anybody, even my wife, when I said, hey, guess what these black cubes are called? I said taint, and she just started cracking up. They could have called it corruption. They could have just called it threat. They could have called them nightmare cubes. They could have called them anything except for taint. And you actually do spread taint on the board. So anyways, these are called taint. And they will come out on the board. And anytime a space has 5 or more taints, you remove all but 1 and you spawn an enemy on the board. So that's another threat that you're managing. So you're kind of managing, you're trying to balance the spread of taint, your conviction, and your nightmare, all while accomplishing pretty much kind of 2 or more goals. So this game is scenario based, and the base game comes with 5 different scenarios, and that's cool. But the scenarios themselves, well, let's take a look at the cards. And this is another spot where I think the art really just kind of, where it fails to be evocative of the theme. So each one of the each one of these scenario cards has a completely different look, and none of them look good. They're, and again, the white back, each one has different fonts, and none of the fonts are good. I mean, we have Comic Sans. I know this is kind of like a comic book themed scenario, but the Beast at the Door, this is the one that I did where you're fighting this kind of like werewolf monster. Attack of the Mind Reader. None of these look very good. Like War of the Roses, and this one, Dead Serious, where you're fighting a killer clown. I just don't even know what is going on with that background. You know, a lot of games like this, I would pick the scenario, I would pick the big bad, I would pick the thing that I want to do in the game based on how it looks, because I'm going to be staring at it for a couple hours on the table. If I was to pick these up and look at one, I don't want to play any of these. None of these spark my imagination just based on the way they look. And I know that may seem superficial, but games utilize art, and the art is on display for everyone to see for a long time. And so when the art fails to engage me, I fail to be fully engaged with the game. And you can say the same thing about the cards. So there are a lot of small cards, and many, these are all scenario specific. And so the backs of the cards, I mean, Panic. Here's the ones for the clown. I don't even know what is up, especially this this font here. Clown abilities. Bomb defusal code. I mean, they look amateurish, and not in a good way that has a lot of character. It looks like placeholder art, that it never got past the prototype stage. So I don't know, maybe the second edition has much better art, better iconography, a better comprehensive just look and feel that makes the game pop a little more. I don't know. In addition to, I forgot to show you with the characters, each character also comes with 3 ability cards. And even those just, there is nothing special about the look of them at all. And then there are also 2 other decks. And this deck I actually think is pretty interesting. This is called the Echoes deck. So the game is split up into 2 phases, a daytime phase and a nighttime phase. At the beginning of the day phase every time, our heroes are kind of waking up from their nightmares. And at the beginning of that turn, each hero draws a Echoes card that kind of depicts how they reacted to their dreams the night before. And these can be good things and bad. So Feeble. The shadowy figure in your nightmare keeps you off balance and dizzy. Upon awakening, you feel rather uncoordinated. -2 combat. So you'll have a -2 combat for that entire turn. Or you might have a -3 to your social checks. You get to draw an artifact. So yeah, they're good and bad, and these do help you in planning your turn, because you're going to want to plan your turn around how you reacted to that night's dream. And then of course the other deck of card is the artifacts that I talked about earlier. So the card backs are somewhat similar in color, at least. Their fronts are exactly the same. And so when you're looking at your character, when you have these splayed out, it's hard sometimes to tell which one is the artifact and which one is the echo. So that would be definitely something to take a look at if you were designing a game. There is you really want to think about the way your game looks on the table. And if you take a step back and you take a look at this table right now, it almost looks like there are 3 or 4 sets of components from different games on the table. At least it does to me. It does not look like everything here belongs in the same universe. And I guess that really is the reason why I'm not super excited about this game. The gameplay itself is okay. It's a pretty standard threat management action adventure game. One thing you're doing is each scenario comes with a set of personal reflection cards, and it comes with 4 different decks, and you're going to give one complete set to each player at random. And these are little kind of short stories that take place within the world of the scenario. And they dictate things about where you start, where you need to go to find different clues to solve the puzzle. You're not really solving a puzzle though. You're just moving along this linear progression, reading little stories and learning things. You as the player don't actually solve any puzzles. Your character in the world is the one solving the puzzles. So this is kind of cool because at least the first time you play this game, you'll read through these and you'll have a neat little adventure, neat little story. But once you play it a couple times, you're going to know everything. And I'm not sure if the gameplay is good enough to alleviate the lack of surprise in the narrative. I'm not sure yet. One thing that I was pretty excited about when I first opened the rulebook, and I was looking at the setup, I saw that you play with a different number of tiles for a certain number of players. And I thought, wow, this game really must scale well from 2 to 4 players. So each one of these is a tile. And you have street tiles and you have location tiles. And you randomly, each scenario will tell you specific locations that have to be in that scenario. And then you'll pick a few at random, and then a few streets at random, and you'll make your city. So seeing as how the map is different size for different players, I thought the game was going to be really well balanced for the ability to play 2 heroes. Because you guys know I like to play, when playing solo games like this solo, I like to play as 2 different heroes. I find that the most interesting. I don't like to play more because it gets cumbersome and there's just too much to think about. And often playing one in any game that supports only one hero is usually quite difficult. Unfortunately, the only way this game scales for 2 players playing 2 heroes is in the size of the map. And in some of these scenarios, playing on a smaller map actually makes it harder because some of the enemies might have up to 8 movement, I think. So the enemy I was fighting in this one, the main boss, had 6. In one of the scenarios, you start with a bad guy out already in play. Let's see if I can find him real quick. So his name is Bryce the Damned. And he has a move of 3. And he's going to be following the heroes around the entire game. So the hero's movement is only 2. And so if he starts next to one of your heroes, can become very hard for your hero in a smaller board like this to ever actually escape some of the big bad guys. And in addition to that, some of the bad guys are really hard, and fighting them with only 2 heroes can be difficult. This is especially true in this Beast at the Door, the scenario that I played, because as each hero completes their personal reflection deck, they get to draw a card, or it'll tell you which card to draw from this Dream Fragments deck. And these are things that you've discovered to help you kill the beast. So in a 4-player game, you would get to draw 4 of those before you could summon the beast. In a 2-player game, you only get to draw 2, but you're still fighting the beast at the same power level. The enemies don't scale to the number of players. And so that makes playing 2 very difficult. I might try this game again with my group. I'm not sure though. I don't think this is one that I would introduce to them, because I don't think it does enough things well that they could overlook some of the problems. Personally, I can overlook some of the issues, and like I said, I am going to keep this game. I do want to play through some of the single player scenarios with 1 hero to see how they've scaled these to work with only 1 hero. Hopefully there are some other enemy cards in there that make things a little more manageable. But there is a lot of stuff, and the box actually is quite nice, and it comes with a great insert that everything fits. So yeah, I don't know. I am a little disappointed in this game. I've played it twice now. Once was a learning game. This last game here that I lost against the Beast, because I didn't lose, but I didn't win, because it basically just came down to stat checks, and the enemy ended up being super hard, and I had to get basically, I don't know, 20 or so really good rolls right in a row, and it became tedious, and I completely lost my interest, and that is not a good thing with a game. I should be excited about playing a game for the first time. You know, if there's ever one time that you play a game that you should be super excited about it, it's the first time. So yeah, maybe I'll come back and do another talk about the game as a single player game when I use the stuff from the Crux Collection expansion. But I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if I'm excited enough to keep it set up right now. But anyways, I just wanted to give a little talk on the Shared Dream. Hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at it. And there are some other playthroughs, so watch some playthroughs. I think Rolling Solo has a playthrough, and I want to say Doug Herring has a playthrough. So you might like it. And I have a feeling that in not too long from now, this game, you will be able to find this game for less than retail. I think it will be one that is discounted. So all right guys, we'll take it easy and have a good one. We'll talk to you later. Bye bye.